Hi everyone, I'm Ash Easton from Immerse UK.
Hey, and I'm Dave Haynes from HTC Vive.
And welcome to our second event in the series on the future of work in VR. Before we kick off, I'm just going to give a brief intro to Immerse UK for anyone who's in the audience who's new and hasn't heard of us before. We are a cross-sector network for immersive technology in the UK. Next slide. We are part of a larger organization called the Knowledge Transfer Network, the KTN, which is primarily funded by Innovate UK, basically to facilitate cross-sector innovation in the UK and to help UK businesses to scale. So we are something called a Special Interest Group, a SIG, which sits under the umbrella of the KTN. And next slide. We were set up to become essentially the largest network of immersive tech professionals in the country. We sit kind of at the heart of all innovation happening in the space. We help companies to scale and just kind of help to drive all the right kind of conversations to push the industry forward. So we're really, really proud. HTC Vive is actually one of our founding members. We're really happy to be doing these these first events ever in VR with them. And I'm just going to hand it over to Dave to tell you a little bit about the series and the topic today of spatial design.
Yeah, so thanks, Sasha, for the welcome, and likewise, it's been great to partner with Immerse UK on this series of events. And we're here today, we're going to talk about spatial design, but just to give you some background, this is actually the second of a series of 3 virtual events that we've done. So I just want to formally welcome you to this amazing Vive amphitheater that we've designed in conjunction with Engage. So we had the first event on April the 21st. That was all about remote work and collaboration. And there's an archive of that online that we can point you to afterwards. Then today, of course, is around spatial design. And then on May 14th, for those of you that are in the audience that are interested, we have some great guests and some great panelists and topics around training the next workforce as well. So please join us for that. It should be a great session. Okay, so spatial design, we're going to get into what we actually mean by that, but really spatial design is creating in 3D in VR. And I think this is a really rich topic for today because we have a huge ecosystem of design tools that are compatible with Vive, whether that's actually on the hardware side. We have a partnership with Logitech. They have their VR stylus, which helps people to create and is tracked when you use it in conjunction with the Vive headset. But there's also this really kind of deep well of new tools that people are using in VR as well. So whether that's new companies like Tvori, Gravity Sketch, Mindscape, or whether it's established tools like VRED that have VR capabilities. There's a huge wealth of these kind of platforms that you can use not just as a consumer but also as an enterprise. And of course, it goes without saying, but these all work really great across the Vive range of headsets. I would say for these use cases, really, it's the Vive Pro that is the workhorse here. So whether that's regular Vive Pro, or whether you have integrated eye tracking, which you can actually take advantage of on software like VRED, but also on the Vive Cosmos family, it has a great flip up front, so it's great for people who are designing at their desk and they need to switch from 2D to 3D view. Some of these software also work on standalone, or they have kind of paired back experiences for standalone. But then last but not least are our kind of accessories, so the wireless adapter, which helps you to move around as you design. So I'm not going to give you too much on this. I'm sure you guys know the various different hardware families, but I should point out that I know that we've got some customers in the room. So if you're interested in talking more about this, then we will have some of our team in the room afterwards.
Yeah. We also have a great innovation partner program at Immerse UK where we actually help businesses get their foot in the door with all of this stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So Asha, maybe you want to talk through the agenda for today.
Yeah, so we're going to start with a couple of product presentations, one from Masterpiece and Tvori, and then we're going to have a keynote talk from a creative in the industry who uses these tools frequently, and then we're going to have a panel discussion led by Dave, followed by a Q&A, and then afterwards we're going to go to networking. Obviously, sorry to everyone on YouTube, but the networking is going to be in the VR platform, so that's where we're going to kind of cut off after the Q&A.
Yeah, exactly. So
But
great.
you know what? I should probably let people know though, for people who are on YouTube, I will actually be watching the comments. So if you have questions, I will be in here and I'll ask them for you.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So we're gonna kick off. We're gonna kick off with the product presentations. First up is going to be Jonathan from Masterpiece, and we'll hand it over to him. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Jon Gagne, CEO of Masterpiece VR. We first launched Masterpiece VR in January 2017, and at that time, it was the first and only fully collaborative 3D modeling app that lets you easily create within virtual reality. Now, recently, we've had a major upgrade, a professional upgrade called Masterpiece Studio that lets you do more elaborate creations and easily prepare that content for animation. And if you look up here, we can show you a quick video.
Masterpiece VR uses virtual reality to create the first fully collaborative 3D modeling platform. It lets you create any content you want quickly and easily.
Masterpiece Studio is a VR creative suite that lets any creative without 3D modeling and animation skills make 3D content in minutes.
We're located in Ottawa, the capital of Canada, and we've got people on our team located internationally.
Masterpiece VR is a software company that uses virtual reality. Our CEO helped build this team that was immediately looking to solve this content creation problem because he knew it was a technical problem more than anything.
The vision of Masterpiece VR is to democratize 3D content creation. It's to give everyone the power to easily create whatever it is that they can see and as quickly as possible bring that into a digital copy into the world.
Helps users create 3D content 10 times faster than with the traditional method because it's less technical, and it helps them save time in their professional pipelines.
In conventional pipelines, the ideation process, the 3D modeling, the skinning, the rigging, all of these are compartmentalized tasks that require a person with 3 years of education for each piece of the pipeline.
You immediately see how easy it is for you to just take creative ideas and make it visual and adapt it really quickly to whatever you're thinking.
I have a 2D artist background, so I have to think in 3D to ideate and come up with concepts and design things that a 3D modeler can use. Within 15 minutes of learning the basics in the software, I was able to 3D model.
And now we've opened up our new Masterpiece platform that has really powerful professional tools such as Masterpiece Creator.
It has a bunch of features that professionals have been asking for a while. So this is where we're connecting with large studios. So this adds a bunch of interesting things like layers that gives you a lot of details and new ways to actually refine your model and make it even more polished and precise.
We've got Masterpiece Motion, which is an incredible software that lets you take that 3D model and prepare it for animation.
It allows people to very, very quickly rig a model and then to actually make it move.
I've been using 3ds Max pretty much since I've been working here. I've been using it as professionally for 3 years now, and I've actually started using Masterpiece VR, and it's been an amazing change to my workflow. It allows me to quickly do up these high-res, high-poly models and then bring it into 3ds Max here and then do the low-poly and then bake the normals, and then pretty much we're done. And it's been an amazing transition.
Vive is extremely important to our development and testing. It's the tool that allows us to test the more complex aspects of our tool. So there's more space for the artists to actually move around their models and create larger environments and scenes very smoothly.
We're really honored that we won the VDA. It's been really beneficial because it has given us recognition, access to hardware, and funding in this really critical time of our company's growth. If you'd like to try out our hobbyist version of Masterpiece VR, you can go right to Viveport. And if you're interested in our professional version, see it at masterpiecevr.com. And if you're interested in joining our social communities, please join us on VR Creatives on Facebook.
And there you go. Using this, you can easily create within virtual reality. And now that you saw a quick preview of it, I'm really pleased to announce that within the next few weeks, we have a major upgrade coming. It's going to give advanced professional collaboration. So you and your remote teams during this time, difficult times, can easily work together. It also has some advanced mesh cleanup tools where previously you had to take the model out of virtual reality and use complicated traditional software. Now you'll be able to do this all within virtual reality. So when you put all this together and you take software such as Masterpiece Studio and you add it to other animation software such as Tvori, you can now create the entire animation pipeline all within virtual reality. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Okay, next up, I'd like to invite Inga to the stage from Tvori.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to welcome you here. I'm Inga, CEO and co-founder of Tvori. Tvori is design, prototyping, and animation software for building amazing products and experiences for virtual and augmented realities. With our software, you can ideate, visualize, and pitch your ideas in a very vivid way, and so you can be much more productive and successful as a team. So recently we visited our users in the UK, in London, and we gathered a workshop. So the idea was actually to demo what's new in Tvori and also ask them what they think of it. So I propose now to have a look at the screen.
Hi, my name's Sean. I'm a virtual reality artist based in London, and today we're here at the Digital Catapult to run a workshop for the amazing VR animation platform Tvori. Entirely in virtual reality, Tvori allows you to animate in real time and also in keyframe animation and tell stories in a visual way, in a very natural way to how you're used to seeing and moving objects around in the world.
Seeing how simply something can be made with Tvori really makes it open to people who haven't got the technical skills or have the ideas that they want to execute, which has been really good.
When I've tried Tvori, I've been really inspired because it's an artist's tool. A keyboard and a mouse does not feel like an artist's tool, but once you try it, it's really hard not to have a revelation.
Thanks a lot for watching this video, and as our users are saying, tools like Tvori, the mission is to democratize 3D content creation. Animation is an essential part of Tvori, and now it's accessible to anyone, so you don't need to know anything about 3D animation to get starting in Tvori. You actually create by just doing things, because you can finally interact with your 3D models, objects, and with animation like you do in real life. But what I want to emphasize is the fact that the value becomes even more significant when you are building for the mixed reality. So the disruption for the flat screen media is coming, but already today we have to make sure that if we want to build a truly immersive, amazing product for virtual or augmented reality, it does make sense to start prototyping all within VR, to understand the scale, to explore the ergonomics of your space, to make sure that you have right distances and you have right interfaces so that they're user-friendly and there are no questions for your users of your products why they should watch or play your product within a headset. And that's why Tvori today is a design of prototyping software for XR teams. And we work with companies like Walmart and Unity and Adobe and HTC Vive to make sure that the new generation of products for this media are born all within VR. And you will definitely feel the difference if it's not. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions after we have the panel discussion. And let's network. Happy to be here today.
Thank you, Inga. So next up, we have Rafi Nizam, who is an award-winning multidisciplined visual storyteller and media industry creative executive with over 20 years of experience in the entertainment and tech sectors. So he's going to come up and do a keynote and kind of explain a little bit more about how he's been using these tools and how they've improved his workflow.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Wasn't it awesome hearing from Jon and Inga about their cool applications? Thank you, Vive and Immerse UK for putting on this event and for inviting me to speak. It's such an exciting time for creators. We're on the precipice of a paradigm shift. You know, the landscape of video-based content today is an evolutionary result of democratized creation tools and decentralized distribution. Anyone can shoot and share videos easily. And that same evolution is happening for CG content creation, a paradigm shift accelerated by XR and real-time design tools. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. To give you some context, I'm a multidisciplined visual storyteller and creative media executive. I've been in the media and entertainment space for some 20 odd years, from advertising to film production, TV development, and VR. In my previous role as VP Creative for Immersive Entertainment at NBC Universal, I led creative innovation, strategy, narrative design, and visual development across traditional and emerging media with a focus on animation, XR, real-time, and virtual production. In parallel, I'm an independent animator, illustrator, and character designer. Now, I blend, in fact, my executive experience with my passion for the craft to transform the origination, production, and distribution of CG content to be more democratized, creator-friendly, collaborative, and efficient. As an independent consultant, I've introduced XR spatial design workflows to companies in a range of sectors. These workflows empower teams to visualize ideas and reach their audience and customers in ways they can never do before. And that is the opportunity I'm excited to share with you today. With the emergence of spatial design tools, we get methodologies to create in a smarter way, as you heard from Jon and Inga. An alternative to the established two-dimensional interface of a monitor, keyboard, and mouse, visualizing in XR can significantly speed up iteration and dramatically reduce the learning curve of design and visualization for all skill levels. If you're in the content creation business, there's a real opportunity to enable growth and reduce complexity. So here are some techniques that I use with my clients and I've used in my projects too. The first is a stroke-based drawing tool. In the time it takes me to draw a tree in VR, it's the same amount of time it takes me to draw a similar tree on paper. But working this way, I also get a 3D model, a mesh data that I could then use to explore variations. That picture on the left was something I did in a game engine. The one on the top right was something in Adobe Aero. So the time-consuming stuff is normally sculpting and modeling stuff, right? But in VR, because of the speed, you can use that time to explore more sort of the look and feel of things. Similarly, you can sketch a larger scene like this in VR in a matter of sort of 10, 15 minutes, and then use that time you saved on modeling to iterate on rendering styles. So the image here on the bottom left is another augmented reality pre-visualization I did in Adobe Aero and Dimension. And on the far right are sort of more traditional DCC design applications. So visualizing in VR enables artists like me to explore my design ideas in 3 dimensions much quicker than I could with the established method. This unlocks the opportunity to retain the artist's hand a lot more in the design process and further down the production pipeline. So on the left is one of my original drawings. I didn't put this in for self-promotion. This was put in specifically for me to investigate what it's like to draw a similar piece of art in VR, because I know the process it takes me in 2D as a hand-drawn artist. So I wanted to compare apples to apples. And for this character, I used my 2D artwork as reference and drew a 3D version using that same process I used with the tree. And it does feel like, even though I'm modeling the character, it does feel like a drawing process because it feels like a natural extension of how I would do it the traditional method. I then use the video that you see in the middle, that 3D model there, as a spatial reference within a mobile design tool to trace the proportions and get a low-res version on the far right. And if you're familiar with lodding in game engines, well, I've been using that as a way of compiling multiple levels of fidelity for models into a single master asset. So if you're working with a vendor, or if you're creating content in multiple formats, well, you can create your master assets in VR and then bring them together using lodding. Obviously, like any 3D program, you can pick any camera angle you want. But as far as I'm aware, VR is the only digital medium that places you inside the artwork as you're creating it. And this is a real game changer, right? Because designing within it means you're always reminded of the end user experience. Or in this case, you empathize with the character's point of view in a story, while also having the flexibility to jump to a sort of goddess view of the land, or frame up your shots if you're the director. And you're still in the concept art stage. And that clear understanding of the experience sort of transcends the traditional barriers of production and facilitates collaboration and communication between team members. Here's an animatic I created with those same techniques. If you're not familiar with animatics, the purpose of an animatic is usually to determine the essential storytelling moments, sequencing, shot sizes, location, and pace of the narrative. Maybe the scale and basic performance of the characters too. But because of the accelerated process within VR, I was able to create this animatic I'm about to play from scratch on my own in under a week. So let's have a look. So in addition to figuring out the shot sizing and pacing and stuff, you can see here that I've chosen color, lighting, mood, and even some rough animation has been explored. So this opens up new possibilities for pre-visualization and the briefing process. Another technique is mesh-based sculpting. This is in Masterpiece. And with this method, you can really get much more detailed models by manipulating primitive shapes like spheres, cubes, and cylinders and build up more detail. So robust production-ready models like this character for feature quality animation is just a much more fulfilling process creatively than the traditional methods, right? Because a keyboard, mouse, and or even the Wacom stylus for 3D isn't really the best tool for the job. But I'm finding working in XR is a much more sort of natural fit. Case in point, the slinky shape of the snake here was sculpted with one single hand movement, which would be unthinkable using established methods. But with VR, you get to be much more expressive as a 3D modeler. This software, Masterpiece Studio, is such an exciting development in the XR design space. Not only is it powerful for modeling and rigging, but it supports up to 8 simultaneous users in a single scene, and possibly more, Jonathan tells me. So virtual collaboration is a very real thing here for teams and creatives, no matter where they're based. And the third technique is in Tvori, where I essentially arrange pre-made assets in a fully immersive environment, right? So the way I like to describe it is, if you can lay the table for dinner, you can build a scene in VR, because as you can see, this is XR spatial design in full effect. I'm picking up objects and placing them within my space. And just the UI on its own leverages spatial design principles to create an accessible user experience, for any CG content creation process. Here, as I'm browsing a folder on my hard drive, the thumbnails show up as little 3D previews. So right from the off, I'm experiencing spatial design language. And when I find the assets I'm looking for, I just reach onto the shelf, pick them up, and move them to my space. And this feels like playing with toys or action figures, right? And as I build this scene, I'm importing a bunch of assets from various other sources into my space. It's a fast way for experienced users to generate ideas, but it's also a very accessible way for people with no 3D design training to contribute in a meaningful way to production. And you'll see in a moment, I'm using a virtual camera to frame up how a video or still might work in working this way. So even though I'm working in VR, which means the scene is already being validated for spatial formats, even AR, by using this virtual camera, I'm able to validate a third medium, right? The 2D medium. And that cube I place beneath the characters is my marker for the boundaries of a potential AR execution. So it's a really versatile way of ideating. So working that way, a storyboard like this can be such a fun and engaging process for creatives. I use it to previs and storyboard animated stories all the time, as well as prototyping AR apps and games. This is a really cool workflow. So on the top left, I'm sketching out a character really quickly in Quill. And I'll just skip forward a bit so you don't sit through the whole process. But designing a character from scratch in VR, something of this sort of fidelity, takes half an hour, 40 minutes. And what's important about this is we've got this design challenge of a massive head. So then what I did was I exported each of the body parts into a folder as individual FBX files, and in Tvori I can pick them off the shelf and assemble my rig the way you might build Lego. So again, what used to be a really technical process of rigging characters can be really fun and engaging and playful. So now with this sort of rigid body puppetable rig in place, I can animate it like a stop motion animator would, where you reach out and grab the character and move it in space and set your keys. Or I can hit the record button in Tvori, and at the time it takes you to watch that character look at the camera and wave, that's how long it took me to animate it, because what you're really watching there is me live puppeting the character and recording my movement. So the next step, of course, is to take a bunch of Vive trackers, put one on each foot, one on each wrist, one on the head, one on the hips, and now you've got a really low-cost mocap solution that every animator can have at their desk. And yeah, you're not tracking fingers at the moment and not tracking facial detail either, but you're going a long way to be able to workshop your scenes and try out lots of different ideas without having to book expensive time on a mocap stage. And yeah, most animators, unless they're working on feature quality or realistic movement, they're doing stylized animation. So mocap isn't the solution for the end result. But I compare this to an animator's workflow where they shoot a lot of video reference of themselves. So you're getting that on the far right, that video reference of their performance in the real world, but they're also capturing a spatial reference that they can bring into their Maya scene and set their keys from. So it's kind of like a reference deluxe, if you will. So to sum up, there's workflow synergy that you can unlock in working this way, right? You might be thinking this all seems experimental and nascent, and frankly, it kind of is. But even in these early days, the benefits are obvious. I've no doubt the way of working like this will become commonplace in the near future. We're just scratching the surface with these workflows. Thanks very much, everyone. If you want to chat more about this stuff, I'll be hanging out in the back during the networking moment. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you so much for that, Rafi. That was an amazing example of how these tools can be used. I'd now like to invite everyone back up on stage. So Dave, Rafi, Inga, and Jonathan to continue with the panel discussion, followed by a Q&A.
Okay, and hello and welcome to this panel on spatial design. I'm just going to get my panelists to quickly introduce themselves and where you're coming into for this event today.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Rafi. I'm a multidisciplined visual storyteller and creative media executive. I consult in the XR spatial design space, and I'm based in London.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today. I'm Inga, CEO and co-founder of Tvori. Today, I'm dialing in from St. Petersburg, and we have presence in California and St. Petersburg.
Hey, everyone. I'm Jon Gagne, CEO of Masterpiece VR. We're based out of Ottawa, Canada, and I spend at least a third of the time in the Bay Area.
Great. Just briefly to kick us off, we've called this panel spatial design, but what does that actually mean to you?
Well, for spatial design, I feel it's kind of like an umbrella term, right? There are multiple disciplines that even before VR existed within the spatial design terminology, stuff like architecture and urban design and theories on channeling traffic. All of that stuff is spatial design because the space that you're designing for is an integral part of the grammar that's part of the design process. And I at the moment, I'm saying XR spatial design for the stuff that I do, because it is firmly in that digital space, in that three-dimensional space that you use natively to solve 3D problems.
Yeah, and Inga, maybe your take?
Yeah, so I really like the definition of Rafi, and it does exist for quite some time. So the only comment I want to add is the fact that lots of people who are even doing some stuff which I would call spatial design, they do not call it this way. So there is no standard term or definition behind spatial design. So what we are using in Tvori and with our customers, spatial design means that you're rigging and designing spatial interfaces and interactions within the space, like in virtual reality. And you have to care about the scale, about how people in this new reality like VR and AR should behave with your interfaces. So for me, to make it very simple, spatial design today is designed for VR and AR spatial computing platform. So.
Got it. And Jonathan, maybe you have something to add on to that, but just building on from there, why should people be using these tools anyway? We've had design tools in 2D for a long time. What's actually being added with VR?
Yeah, great question. So, as you mentioned, we've been creating for a very long time. But the problem is about a mismatch between what you're trying to create and the interface that you're using. And there's a big mismatch with the traditional way of creating 3D, where you use a 2D screen and 2D devices such as a mouse to interact with it. Now, that's that mismatch is a big problem. The best way I can illustrate that is with an analogy. If you remember trying to, when you're young, using an Etch-a-Sketch to draw, well, it was fun, but it's really hard. right? Because there's a mismatched one-dimensional interface to create 2D. If instead you jump to a walking tablet, then suddenly you have that perfect 2D to 2D match, and it becomes easy to draw. Well, virtual reality is like the 3D Wacom tablet. You have a 3D headset and 3D tracked controllers, and that allows for a one-to-one match, allowing you to easily create 3D content where, simply 1% of artists today can create 3D objects. This opens it up to the other 99%, where we're seeing, several orders of magnitude easier to create.
Yeah, Jonathan, and you talk in the Masterpiece video about the democratization of creation through these tools. Maybe elaborate on that for us.
Absolutely. So when you simplify creating, it opens up the market substantially. If you look at Autodesk, for example, they've got between 70 to 100,000 people in their media and entertainment, that are using their products for media and entertainment. But when you look at compressing the time it takes to learn this software from, years to literally hours, you can use one of these softwares in seconds. You can start to create, and in hours you can start to get good at it. This opens it up dramatically. From a bottom-up analysis using census data, we found over 70 million people, professionals, that could use this in their daily work, and over 1 billion, of course, once there's enough headsets, to be able to do it at a consumer level. So this really changes how we work, how we play, and how we interact with our daily lives once this becomes easy and low friction enough.
And we do come across as sort of evangelists. I'm constantly aware of that as a consultant. I see this in the clients I speak to, but the hyperbole is real. Believe the hype, because as an artist, sculpting and sketching in VR feels like a natural extension of how I move in the real world. So as human beings, we've had decades of moving and creating in a certain way and existing in the world a certain way. So being able to translate that naturally into the VR world is a real game changer, right? So, you can really empower more members of your team to contribute ideas visually in the CG process, because that UI is such a paradigm shift.
Yeah, and Inga, for the platform Tvori that you're working on, who's currently using it, and how do you see that evolving over the next year or so?
Yeah, so we started 4 years ago, and at that time, people were grabbing the tool and sending the messages that I don't have any animation background, but I was able to create my first animated story. And this is incredible, for people without any background in 3D animation to release a full animated story. And like Cartoon Network, which is known as Studio Animation Studio, they were able to release 3VR games, Johnny's VR, and they did it within virtual reality, people who, again, they never touched the 3D tools. But for us, it was too costly, to create the demand and convince to disrupt their traditional market of media and entertainment. And we decided to focus on XR teams, people who are building for VR and AR, and all the big name companies like Facebook and Unity, Adobe, Walmart are using Tvori today to build content and products for either virtual reality or augmented reality. So, because the value of using VR tools, building for VR or AR is very straightforward compared to the flat screen.
Yeah, and Rafi, when you were using these tools at somewhere like NBC Universal, what was your plan in terms of getting your team to adopt these tools around you?
Sure. Well, there wasn't a plan at the beginning, but sort of halfway through my time in the immersive entertainment team, I realized that, whilst show don't tell is kind of like the old saying, with XR, experiencing it is paramount. For our team, building a highly polished POC was key for internal buy-in from senior management. But it wasn't enough to just show it to them. They really had to see a one-to-one use case brought to life. So in other words, if I showed somebody, and I do this all the time with clients today, if I show them Beat Saber and Half-Life Alyx, they'll enjoy it, they'll get a lot out of it, but they'll come out going, okay, well, if it's a games company, they'll say, yeah, but we don't make games like that, so it's not for us, and they'll discount the whole medium. Or if it's not even a games company, if it's an entertainment firm, they really won't get the link between, look, the way you can play with objects and manipulate 3D objects in these games, how about you use that for a creativity tool or a productivity tool or a staff engagement tool? So really there are 3 steps that I've kind of arrived at now that really helps move the needle. One is to educate. So after you've shown them the products out there, you educate them by demonstrating relevant use cases to the way their team operates or their business challenges. The second is to then implement some of those techniques. So once you've educated them, you've got their attention, now implementing them with by upskilling a few of the key members of the team who are curious and into it. And once you've upskilled them with these techniques, then you have a team to work with through which you can create a relevant POC, right? One that targets an existing pain point or unlocks a capability that the business has wanted. Once you follow those 3 steps, then there's no denying to senior management that there's something really worthwhile investing in when it comes to exospatial design.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And staying on the topic of teams, I think, today during the COVID-19 situation, we've been talking a lot about remote work and remote collaboration in VR. Is that applying to the design space, Jonathan?
Absolutely. So, over 50% of people previous to COVID do some kind of remote work. Now, with the current situation, essentially everybody needs to. So to be able to interact over distance is fundamental. And, there's a reason why we're all doing it here, because it's really powerful to collaborate using virtual reality. Well, there's no difference for the creative space, for spatial design. And that's one of the fundamental reasons that we started working on that over 4 years ago. And why it's critical to enable teams to effectively work together, communicate, interact, do design, not just the review, but the design in real time. You see substantial improvements in both the speed of creation, the ability to communicate together, and the ability to, have your team aligned to the same goals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's switch to the hardware side of things. Maybe just a very quick answer from each of you. But if you had your wish list, today we're seeing improved ergonomics. Devices like the Cosmos having the flip up front, or it might be Pro Eye with eye tracking, or there might be the move to standalone like the Focus Plus devices. But if you could have your wish list, where would you see the emphasis on the hardware in the future? Rafi.
So I'm really happy with the resolution of the most recent wave of headsets. As a creator, I don't feel that's lacking at all. I would love an expanded field of view. I know the two are probably related, but having that comfort just extended further out, that would be top of my list. The second would be a variety of input devices. If I think about my workflows, I want to at certain times be completely immersed in VR like I am now, and with these controllers, be able to do my sculpting and drawing and concepting and moving through space. But there might be times where I want to grab a stylus and switch into mixed reality mode. So I still see my 3D object projected, but in mixed reality mode with the keyboard and mouse and my 2D monitor for certain workflows, I want to be able to combine those. And there are many other, scenarios where you might want to vary or mix and match your interfaces. So I'd like to see not just standardization, but really well-supported input devices for creatives.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And I should kind of give a shout out to Logitech here. Back at MWC, we announced our partnership on the Logitech VR stylus, which I think we should start seeing getting into more workplaces soon. Inga, from your side, top of your hardware wish list?
So I think when it comes to be a productivity tool, the hardware is already in a pretty good shape. So people already in companies can spend hours in a headset, which is really amazing. And with features like eye tracking, hand tracking, it's all getting further and further. If you're talking about consumer market, definitely the cost is essential, and it should be mobile, it should be lightweight and all that stuff. So it should go both directions. So the direction for mass adoption, again, cost, mobile, and the journey has started already. We just need more hits, more amazing content that push people to want to have a headset. And from productivity point of view, I think a new type of inputs for the hardware and better computing, better memory, all this is important so that you can really move to the mobile era, but allow tools like Tvori, which really need the computational power and memory of the PC to provide availability to work on the mobile standalone headsets.
Yeah, and for HTC, things like 5G has been a big topic for us with our 5G Smart Hub and kind of future innovations to come. Jonathan, does 5G actually have a kind of an impact on the way that the hardware rolls out in the future as well?
Yeah, I think this is a really important part. One of the great things about PC VR is it has great compute, but you require a strong PC, and you have to worry about all these cables and setting it up. And that might be fine for us, but for a lot of people, you need really low friction in the entire setup and usage of it. But with 5G, once you can have a lightweight mobile headset and offload the compute to the cloud, then you can get really high quality virtual reality in a low cost headset. Especially if you take that a step farther, and I know that the headsets with the mobile phone attached to it sort of died, but what we haven't seen is it being plugged into the phone, right? As much. So if you think about it, keep the headset lightweight, plug it in through cable from the phone so that it can send the video and power offloaded, and then use the phone's 5G to connect to the cloud. And essentially what you'll have compute done on the edge with the towers, with high GPUs. Then you can have high resolution stuff done on the cloud. You can compute. You have all the batteries off the headset. You've got the, that being done on the phone. It's a lot cheaper because you have a lot of the things, using the and the headset, and then you get a whole sort of package where it's lightweight and high quality. And I think at that point, that'll be a few years till we get it, low friction. But once we get that, that's the game changer that lets VR be everywhere.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So let's wrap up with our minds on the future, and just a very quick comment from each of you. Where do you see the spatial design space in 5 years' time?
I'm aware this all seems very experimental and nascent, and in a lot of ways it is. Yeah, but even in these early days, XR workflows can really bring considerable value by speeding up, time to market and unlocking new revenue streams and advancing digital transformation. And if you're in the content creation business, it can really, as we said, democratize the creation process and bring meaningful contributions from multiple members of your team. And today, you can use these tools, even though we've got the big headsets and cables. You can supercharge the ideation process and lay foundations for that transmedia production, which is going to lead to sort of a competitor advantage in the medium term. I have no doubt that this way of working will be commonplace in the near future. We're just scratching the surface with these workflows. So if I had to put a timestamp on it, I'm optimistic that mainstream consumer adoption would happen within 5 years, but it's happening right now for enterprise because of the state of the art right now.
Certainly, yeah. Inga, your thoughts?
So, if you allow me to make some analogies. So, you remember when the first website went live, it was 1991, right? For the next almost 15 years, we haven't seen lots of beautiful websites because all web was done by developers, by geeks actually. This is exactly what we see in XR today. So the design is driven by developers, by Unity developers or other software developers. And they're doing this spatial design today. Because we have to make sure that designers and really creative people can jump and build beautiful things. And with products like Masterpiece and Tvori, the goal is actually that anyone can have the presence in XR, right? Like anyone today has his own website. I can build a website within a couple of hours. And even my mom, who is a teacher, can do that because there are tools available out there. So I wish to see in 5 years from now that spatial design becomes available to anyone, and anyone can have a presence in VR or AR, like his own social media page or his own app and experience. So, and I do want to see more creative people and create something for XR and call themselves as spatial designers.
Great. Jonathan, wrapping up with yourself?
Yeah, so I think three key things are going to happen. Within the next 5 years, the quality and is going to dramatically increase, and the friction is going to be dramatically decreasing in both the hardware and the software. The availability is going to dramatically increase as well, and that's the third thing. And when everybody has easy access to this software, it's going to be all the key things to have it explode. So I'm going to make a bold claim right now, and I'm going to say within 5 years from now that 50% of all content that is created in 3D is done using spatial hardware. And I'm going to go a step further and say within the next 10 years, 90% of all 3D content is going to be done this way. And if you're not doing it this way, well, then you're doing it, essentially everything you're doing is going to be slower and more difficult.
Yeah,
Great,
you'll be left
awesome.
with the dust. You'll be left with the dust, no doubt. There are fewer barriers for creative flow and better iteration cycles, and ultimately more meaningful collaboration working spatially.
Great, awesome. Well, on those really positive comments, we're going to wrap this panel up. So thank you guys for joining. And now what we're going to do, we're actually going to, thank you for joining. Yeah. And now what we're going to do, we're going to try and move to a Q&A. So we're going to take some questions, and then all of these guys are going to stick around afterwards, and they're going to move around this beautiful room here, this 5 amphitheater, and we're going to try and do a bit of networking. So if you've got any questions that you don't have time for in the Q&A, then try and find these guys later. But thank you.
Live on YouTube, people can hear.
It's live. Just give it 20 seconds.
Yeah, awesome. And just to let you know what's going to happen next, we're going to do about 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we're actually going to go and break into networking. So one of the great things about the Engage platform is that they have spatial audio, so we'll turn that on when we go to networking, and that means you can kind of cluster around in different groups and have private conversations.